The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is a multilateral lending organization which started operations sometime in 2016. It's lent to projects around the globe worth some $4 billion plus. About $1 billion plus has come into the country here in India. The third edition of the annual meeting of AIIB is happening here in Mumbai. On the sidelines of it, I have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Jin Liqun, who's the president of the organization. Mr. Liqun is someone who's worked in positions of power in the Chinese government and multilateral organizations like the AIIB over the last 2.5 odd decades or so. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I have to begin by asking what is a hot button issue right now, which is essentially the prospect of a trade war. I mean, just want to get your thoughts on it. Are we in one, or what are the prospects of we getting into one?
You see, the trade war between any two nations or among many nations certainly is the concern of not just the people of those nations involved, but also the members of the international community. Because given the global integration at this stage, any trade war would definitely impact on the economic growth and the livelihood of the people, directly or indirectly. So that is the concern of so many people in this world, and definitely it's important for the countries involved to work out the differences.
Do you think we're already in one?
Well, at least I think it's very risky, and there are lots of issues which would have to be dealt with very quickly without an all-out trade war.
China's response, I mean, just to take that point a little forward, so far has been, whenever the US has imposed something, it's imposed, I mean, the measure has been even-handed, equal, and the statement has been conciliatory, that we don't want to trade one, but we won't shy away from one if one were imposed on us. I mean, just trying to get a sense, what is the thinking in China about this one?
You see, it's not appropriate for me to make any judgments on the positions of any country. As the president of this institution, we focus on the broad-based economic development through investment in infrastructure and other productive sectors. Mm-hmm. As I see it, first of all, the Chinese government will look forward to a resolution to solve this problem as soon as possible. And I do hope both sides will try their very best to work this out. And our job is to invest in infrastructure in our members so that people understand by working together through cooperation and collaboration, we can make the world better. We can create tomorrow, better tomorrow than today. This is our core values, and I hope things will be worked out. It's not easy, I know.
You're absolutely right. And I think that when ministers come down for the meeting, would you imagine that a lot of the conversation would be around this? I mean,
probably, I think, given the theme of this year's annual meeting, mobilizing private sector, innovations, collaboration,
sure.
I don't think people would be distracted by the ragings of the trade war, but I do believe our very productive and constructive dialogues here in the bank's annual meetings would probably help some people to understand what is the right course of action, what is the best way to deal with the tough issues we are faced today. I hope people will understand this. And since we have 86 members, and most of these members of our bank would more or less be involved if there's any trade war, you know.
I'm sure it'll be more cordial than the G7. Fair enough. So let's move on, sir. I mean, to infrastructure and lending in that particular sector. What's happening here in India? You've lent about $1.25 billion already to various projects in India. What is the pipeline essentially? Is what I'm trying to understand.
You see, we certainly believe India would be a major contributor to this bank in many dimensions. India is number 2 the shareholders in this bank, and India is the largest borrower of this institution. And even today, our lending to India accounts for 1/4 of our total lending. As we move forward, even though it would be more balanced lending program, India would be still the biggest borrower, particularly against the background that China, as an initiator of this bank, is not going to borrow in large amount from this institution. So that definitely would make India the biggest borrower. And I think the programs, the lending programs in India is important, because if it's of high quality, it demonstrates not just the capacity of India, but also the capacity of this bank. And I hope our operations in India would be models for the lending programs in other countries which we are developing. India is a country with very strong institutional capacity. You have lots of experience by working with the World Bank, AIIB, or other institutions. So other developing countries can learn from the experience in this case. So we are very much positive about the prospect of developing our programs in this country. And you see,
which sector, sir, do you think?
Yes, you see, the demand comes mainly from transport and energy. Energy, power, including power generation, distribution, transmission, distribution. And in the project in India, you find we finance not just expressway, but rural roads, which is very important for poverty reduction, for bringing the people in remote areas to the market, to improve the gender balance, to empower the women financially. You see, this is very much important. And India is a country which is quickly developing and lifting many people out of poverty. And the direct consequence of the people moving out of poverty is increased demand for electric power. But how can we develop?
So in India, you're saying it's basically power and the entire ecosystem?
Transport, power, subway, for instance. Transport is part
metros
of
and
yes, and basically, and actually, the bank as a whole has most of resources focused on transport and energy, because of the demand from our member countries.
I mean, the one sector which has been booming in India is roads. I mean,
yes,
the government, NHAI, etc., they've been sort of bidding out projects.
Yes, of course.
And it's been doing very well. But power essentially is, I mean, it sort of goes into the bucket of a stressed kind of a sector. Too much capacity came on. There wasn't gas, natural gas for the post-power projects. And I mean, a lot of those are non-performing loans with state-owned banks here.
You know, electric power, power generation, distribution, transmission is still very important for India. As I said, when more and more poor people moving out of poverty, the demand will increase. The issue is how can you meet the increasing demand of power without leaving a big footprint in environment, in climate change.
So we're talking about renewables mostly?
That's right. Renewables or energy efficiency.
Okay.
For instance, when we improve the power transmission distribution of this country, you know, I think it means a lot by cutting down the systemic loss of power transmission and distribution. You do not have to increase more power plants. You can still meet the needs of the people. So energy efficiency is important, and developing solar power in your country is also so important. See.